Hi and welcome. I'm Mich Bondesio and this is Creating Cadence, a podcast about what it really takes to work well and live well in this fast-paced world we live in. I'm the author of The Cadence Effect, and aside from this podcast, I also write regularly over on Substack. The focus of my work is on reimagining work and business for high-performing founders and teams, creatively minded entrepreneurs, and purpose-driven business owners who all want to make a meaningful impact without sacrificing themselves or their people to burnout, hustle, and overwork. This is episode 91, the first of season 15. This season follows a monologue format where I'll be sharing some of the thoughts I'm covering over on Substack. Whether you're listening on your commute, on a walk, or in between tasks, thanks for tuning in. Let's begin. So welcome back. I hope that 2026 so far has been good for you. If you subscribe to the Cadence newsletter, you'll know that this year I'm transitioning with my work. I'm really excited to discover what's going to lie ahead. But as a result of this shift, I'm also needing to be even more intentional about managing my workload and how I pace myself with my creative activities, such as writing and podcasting. So in this season, we're exploring a different rhythm for working and living. One that doesn't just optimize your calendar, but supports your capacity, your clarity, and your creativity too. So over the coming episodes, we'll go back to basics, as well as diving into themes like creating rhythm without rigidity, intentional productivity that's regenerative, and purposeful leadership without self-abandonment. We'll also look at redefining profit, purpose, and progress in a way that's people and planet-friendly. If you're here, it's likely because something in your work or your life has stopped working the way it used to. Maybe you're a tech founder who's built something remarkable, only to find yourself depleted, distracted, or disconnected from what once lit you up. Maybe you're a creatively focused entrepreneur, a professional consultant, or a team player who's lived by the mantra of purpose and performance, but now craves more presence and also more space too. Whoever you are, you've achieved enough to realize that more isn't always the answer, and you're not alone in that. I've been there and I've done that too. So we're starting with something fundamental. Something I also happen to have lived through, survived, and ultimately used to transform myself. Today, I'm talking about the dangers of burning bright and what happens afterwards. There's a version of ambition that we don't talk about enough. The kind that isn't ego-driven, but is instead soul-fueled. The kind that's driven by passion and purpose, by a desire to help, to build something good, to create something meaningful, to make a positive impact. This kind of ambition burns bright. But here's the thing. Burning bright isn't sustainable without the right foundations, so it doesn't always last. If you're anything like I was, you didn't arrive at your work by accident. You poured yourself into it. You crafted it with care. Your business, your role, your mission, it was personal. It probably still is. You showed up fully, you over-delivered, and you kept going. Until something inside of you, too quiet to be heard above the din of your life and work pressures, slowly started to dim. So what happens when the spark goes out? Burnout doesn't always come in a dramatic collapse, although that's what happened to me. Sometimes it's just the creeping numbness. Well, this is how it started for me. The loss of your creative spark, the growing friction between the things you used to love and the things you have to do, the sinking sense that you're constantly behind, and yet always on. It could look like snapping at your partner or coworker for asking a simple question, forgetting your kid's school trip, ignoring texts from friends because you don't have the energy to pretend you're fine, working late again because silence is easier than presence and it's the only time that you can get shit done. It can feel like disconnection from your purpose, from your people, from yourself. In 2015, after a particularly relentless period of work stress layered with grief and personal upheaval, where my light slowly dimmed, I finally hit a wall so hard that my body and mind simply stopped supporting me. For 18 months, I couldn't function properly. I couldn't work. I couldn't read or remember 2 pages of a book. I could barely string thoughts together. I went from being a hyper-reliable multitasker to someone who couldn't choose socks in a clothing store without falling apart. It was one of the most terrifying and ultimately clarifying chapters of my life. Because what I discovered in the deep mire of that collapse was this: you can't build something meaningful by erasing yourself in the process. Without foundations that fuel you, you can't sustain over the journey it takes to build meaningful things. Let's start by considering performance versus pacing. We celebrate resilience, but rarely question what we're being so resilient for. We glorify performance, but not pacing. We're told to optimize everything except being sensitive to the way that we care for ourselves. Eventually, I realized that I didn't need to get back to normal because normal was the problem. What I needed was a new way forward, one that centered well-being and impact, rest and momentum, purpose and presence. That realization led me to explore a different rhythm, not looking to create balance, that's just a static, elusive ideal, but instead of focusing on creating cadence, a more flexible, intentional flow to how I live and work. And this brings me to something important. Productivity was never the problem. Productivity gets a bad rap these days. I get it, for a long time I hated the word too, because we've been led to believe that our productivity is a more important factor of success than how we feel about what we do. We've been trained to think that productivity means squeezing more into less time, optimizing every second, pushing harder, stretching farther. It's the badge of busyness, the religion of hustle, the illusion of control. It can be constrictive and claustrophobicizing. Yes, I made that word up, but if you've ever felt stifled by your workload and responsibilities, I think you'll catch my drift. But what if the problem isn't productivity itself, but instead how we define it? This is the problem because the old model doesn't fit. In the traditional work model, productivity is measured by outputs over inputs, how much we can produce, how fast, with how few resources. It's a useful metric for machines, but we're not machines. We're thinkers, doers, makers, creators, leaders, caregivers, and so much more. We're people with cycles and seasons, distractions and desires, ambitions and limits. We live and work in a world shaped by uncertainty, pressure, and constant digital noise, and yet we're still expected to perform like we're on an assembly line. No wonder so many of us, from startup founders to mission-led creatives to the diligent worker bees that help us make it all happen, feel exhausted, resentful, and out of sync within our work and lives. The data doesn't lie. Burnout is a global problem across roles and industries, with burnout in the workplace affecting as many as 82% of workers. That's crazy, people! Based on research and my own experiences, I ascribe to a different definition. Through my own personal collapse and rebuild, I discovered something both radical and simple. Productivity is not about doing more, it's about doing more of what matters, with intention. What I now call intentional productivity isn't just about being efficient or consistent over time. It's also about being discerning. It's about creating space. It's about working with your values and your body, not against them. It's about getting the right things done in a way that sustains you instead of drains you. And when you practice intentional productivity, something shifts. You start feeling a spaciousness in your days, mentally, emotionally, and physically. You begin to see work differently, not as an endless to-do list, but as a living, evolving expression of what matters to you. You start to lead differently too, not by overextending to fit it all in, but by modeling what sustainability in business actually looks like. And it's freeing. But it's not about achieving balance, because as I've discovered, balance is bullshit. You've heard of work-life balance. It sounds nice, but if you've ever tried to hold on to it, you know how brittle it can be. In my book, The Cadence Effect, I share the example of a seesaw in the playground to demonstrate why this concept is so unhelpful. Balance implies stasis, perfection, an ideal moment frozen in time. But life doesn't work that way. Neither does business. We're always moving, and work and life have to move with us. When we focus on balance, we can't achieve the impossible for more than a moment. Yet we're always striving for it. Which is why I think work-life balance is a bullshit term we've been conned by. So what's the alternative? Well, I think there's a better way. What we need instead is work-life cadence. A rhythm that builds momentum, not a frozen state that keeps us stuck. Creating cadence is the ability to shift gears, adapt your pace, and keep moving through complexity with grace and elasticity. Cadence isn't about slowing down, it's about knowing when to slow down and when to press ahead without burning out in the process. It's a practice of adaptable movement rooted in meaning. But what does this mean in practice? From launch cycles to seasons of deep work, it's about supporting people and building teams and systems that can breathe. For the tech founder sprinting towards the next milestone, Cadence means designing for sustainability, so there's no crash before they get there. For the creative entrepreneur caught in a feast or famine cycle, Cadence means shifting from panic mode and reactionary output to intentional, energy-aligned creation. In both cases, the rhythm is the strategy. And this applies to everyone who works, whether you work for yourself or in a team for someone else. Remember this: you're not lazy for needing rest. You're not unfocused for craving depth. You're not selfish for wanting to reclaim your time. You're not unproductive for wanting to work less. You're human, and productivity was never the problem, but your definition of it might be. So what's next? The focus of this season of the podcast is about what happens after you burn bright and how to rebuild in a way that doesn't burn you out again. It's also about how to avoid the need to rebuild in the first place by starting out with intentionality, so you can avoid burning out and avoid the repercussions that occur when you don't put these things in place. Whether you're a tech founder carrying the weight of a pressured product innovation, a 7-figure CEO with a team reliant on you to be their light bearer in all things, or a mission-led entrepreneur exhausted by your own expectations, my hope is that this season's topics give you a different kind of fuel. Not more advice, not more pressure, just thoughtful insights, grounded frameworks, and stories that honor the truth of what it takes to lead with heart and sustainability, so you can achieve those lofty, soul-fueled ambitions without burning out. Remember, you're not alone and you're not broken. You're just ready to lead yourself and others differently. You don't need to do more, you need to do more of what matters, with clarity, consistency, and care. And I'm here to walk beside you as you do. That's connection, and that's where creating Cadence begins. So thanks for listening. I'll be back soon with the next episode in the series, but a few quick notes before you go. If you found this episode helpful, please like or rate the podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps others to find us. For deeper dives into building a more conscious business, subscribe to my Substack at creatingcadence.substack.com. If you want to find out more about the Cadence Catalyst, an 8-week mastermind that happens twice a year for high-achieving strivers seeking to create more space for sustainable, regenerative success in their work and life, then register your interest at cadence.kit.com/cadence-catalyst. You'll find out more about my work at creatingcadence.co, and you can grab a copy of my book at thecadenceeffect.com. So until next time, keep moving forwards with courage, curiosity, and cadence. Bye for now.